Picture this: a Roman emperor fighting as a gladiator in the Colosseum, convinced he's the reincarnation of Hercules. Another emperor tries to make his horse a government official. And one poor guy gets assassinated while literally taking a bathroom break during a war campaign. Welcome to the wildest political story ever told, the complete saga of all 80 Roman emperors who ruled for over 500 years. We're talking about the ultimate mix of military genius and spectacular madness, family drama that makes reality TV look tame, and enough backstabbing to fuel 1,000 Netflix series. From Augustus, who built the greatest empire in history, to little Romulus Augustulus, who watched it all crumble. Each of these rulers shaped our world in ways we still feel today. So hit subscribe if you're ready for the craziest history lesson you've ever heard. And let's dive into 5 centuries of absolute power, absolute corruption, and absolutely unforgettable characters. This is the episode 7 of our long, but definitely binge-worthy series on all 80 Roman emperors, where we explore the lives of emperors 61st to 70th. If you haven't watched the previous episodes on the first 60 Roman emperors, make sure you check it out in the pinned comment. Now, let's dive into our stories, starting with Emperor 61st, Jovian. From emergency appointment to Christian restorer, meet Emperor number 61, Jovian. This captain of the imperial bodyguard ruled for 8 months in 363-364 CE, negotiating Roman withdrawal from Persia while reversing Julian's anti-Christian policies and restoring religious arrangements that would define imperial government for centuries. Flavius Jovianus was hastily proclaimed emperor by troops stranded deep in Persian territory following Julian's death, representing military necessity rather than dynastic legitimacy or constitutional procedure. His selection demonstrated how crisis situations could elevate competent subordinates to supreme power when survival mattered more than political credentials or family connections. His crucial achievement was negotiating the humiliating but necessary Treaty of Nisibis with Persia, surrendering territorial gains and paying tribute in exchange for safe passage home for Julian's stranded armies. This diplomatic settlement prevented complete military disaster but significantly damaged imperial prestige and abandoned Roman allies to Persian vengeance. The religious restoration involved immediately ending Julian's pagan revival policies and restoring Christian privileges throughout the empire, demonstrating how quickly imperial religious policy could change based on individual emperor preferences. His actions proved that Christianity's institutional position had become essentially irreversible despite temporary setbacks under hostile rulers. His sudden death from accidental carbon monoxide poisoning in 364 CE while traveling through Anatolia ended another brief reign during ongoing succession instability that had characterized imperial politics since Constantine's death. His accidental death created yet another succession crisis, requiring immediate military resolution. Jovian had proven that emergency appointments could provide effective crisis leadership when survival was at stake, though his brief reign illustrated how individual imperial deaths could destabilize carefully negotiated diplomatic settlements during periods of external pressure and internal uncertainty. From emergency election to systematic defender, meet Emperor number 62, Valentinian the First. This Pannonian soldier became emperor at age 43 in 364 CE and ruled for 11 years until his death at 54, establishing the last successful imperial dynasty through military competence and systematic frontier fortification that would define late Roman defensive strategy. Flavius Valentinianus was elected emperor by military commanders following Jovian's accidental death, representing professional army officers taking direct control of imperial succession to ensure competent leadership during ongoing external crises. His selection demonstrated how military merit could still determine imperial appointment when the empire faced existential threats requiring immediate, effective response. His remarkable achievements included systematic fortification of Rhine and Danube frontiers, innovative recruitment policies that expanded military manpower through barbarian integration, and administrative reforms that improved provincial government efficiency while maintaining central control. These defensive preparations created the fortified border systems that would protect the empire for generations. The defining characteristic of his reign was effective military leadership combined with religious tolerance, showing the controversies while focusing on practical defense requirements. His policies balanced Christian imperial identity with operational effectiveness, proving that pragmatic governance could transcend religious divisions. His establishment of dynastic succession through appointing his brother Valens as Eastern Emperor and later his son Gratian as Western heir represented the last successful attempt to create stable imperial transition through family appointment rather than adoption or military selection, though this success would prove temporary. His death in 375 CE from a stroke while campaigning against Germanic tribes marked the end of the most militarily effective reign since Constantine, leaving fortified frontiers and trained armies that would defend the empire through the coming barbarian invasions that would test every defensive system he'd created. From brotherly appointment to catastrophic defeat, meet Emperor number 63, Valens. This Eastern Emperor ruled from 364 to 378 CE, governing competently for over a decade before suffering the most devastating Roman military disaster since Cannae in a battle that fundamentally altered the empire's relationship with barbarian peoples. Flavius Valens was appointed Eastern Emperor by his brother Valentinian I, representing successful power sharing between trusted family members who could coordinate policy across the divided empire. His administrative experience and military competence made him an effective ruler during normal circumstances, though the crisis that would define his reign was anything but normal. His genuine achievements included successful campaigns against Persian forces, fiscal reforms that strengthened Eastern finances, and effective management of theological controversies that had destabilized previous Eastern reigns. These accomplishments demonstrated real imperial competence over more than a decade of generally successful governance. The fatal crisis began with Gothic refugee requests for settlement within Roman territory, fleeing Hunnic invasions from beyond the Danube River.
Valens' humanitarian decision to accept these barbarian settlers created unprecedented challenges when local Roman officials exploited and abused the desperate refugees, turning potential allies into dangerous enemies. His death at the Battle of Adrianople in 378 CE, where Gothic forces destroyed two-thirds of the Eastern army and killed the emperor himself, represented the worst Roman military defeat in centuries. This catastrophe fundamentally changed the balance between empire and barbarians, establishing permanent barbarian settlement within imperial frontiers rather than temporary military service. Valens had demonstrated that competent administration couldn't overcome disastrous strategic decisions during crisis periods, while his death marked the beginning of a new phase where barbarian peoples would live within the empire as federates rather than being expelled or enslaved.
From teenage heir to religious revolutionary, meet Emperor number 64, Gratian. This son of Valentinian I became Western Emperor at just 16 in 375 CE and ruled for 8 years until his death at 24, implementing radical Christian policies that alienated traditional Roman supporters while facing military challenges that would reshape the empire forever. Flavius Gratianus inherited the Western Empire as a teenager, initially sharing power with his infant half-brother Valentinian II under their mother's regency. His early reign was dominated by the aftermath of Adrianople, where his uncle Valens' death had left the Eastern Empire in complete military and political chaos, requiring immediate Western intervention. His most controversial religious policies included rejecting the ancient title Pontifex Maximus and removing the altar of victory from the Senate House, symbolically ending imperial connection to traditional Roman religion. These actions pleased Christian supporters, but enraged pagan aristocrats who still dominated senatorial ranks and controlled significant wealth and influence. The defining crisis was his response to Adrianople disaster, where he appointed Theodosius I as Eastern Emperor and implemented new policies for managing barbarian settlement within imperial frontiers. These decisions represented strategic innovation during unprecedented military challenges, though they also marked the permanent end of traditional frontier policies. His death in 383 CE came during Magnus Maximus's rebellion in Britain, where his own troops abandoned him for a usurper who promised restoration of traditional military values and religious tolerance. Gratian was murdered while fleeing toward Italy, ending another attempt at stable Valentinian dynastic succession. Gratian had proven that religious innovation could be as politically dangerous as military incompetence when it alienated powerful traditional constituencies, while his death demonstrated that imperial survival required balancing Christian identity with practical military and aristocratic support systems.
From Spanish general to Christian lawgiver, meet Emperor number 65, Theodosius I. This last emperor to rule both East and West became Eastern Emperor at age 33 in 379 CE and ruled for 16 years until his death at 49, making Christianity the empire's official religion, while rebuilding military strength after the Adrianople catastrophe. Flavius Theodosius was appointed Eastern Emperor by Gratian following Valens' death and the complete collapse of Eastern military power, representing recognition that the post-Adrianople crisis required experienced commanders rather than dynastic heirs or constitutional appointees. His Spanish origins continued the trend toward provincial leadership that had dominated imperial politics since the 3rd century. His extraordinary military achievements included rebuilding the Eastern Army through innovative recruitment and integration policies, negotiating effective treaties with Gothic federates that converted former enemies into allied troops, and personally leading successful campaigns that restored imperial control over devastated Balkan territories. The revolutionary religious legislation included the Edict of Thessalonica in 380 CE, making Nicene Christianity the empire's official religion, systematic persecution of pagan practices throughout imperial territories, and closure of traditional temples that had functioned for centuries. These policies completed the Christian transformation that Constantine had begun generations earlier. His death in 395 CE marked the last time a single emperor would govern both eastern and western territories, as the empire was permanently divided between his sons Arcadius and Honorius. This partition represented recognition that imperial administration had become too complex for unified control under existing governmental systems. Theodosius I had proven that energetic leadership could overcome even catastrophic military defeats while establishing Christianity as the fundamental basis of imperial law and culture for the remainder of Roman history, though his death would begin the final phase of Western imperial decline.
From infant heir to adolescent victim, meet Emperor number 66, Valentinian II. This youngest son of Valentinian I ruled the Western Empire from age 4 in 375 CE until his suspicious death at 21 in 392, spending his entire reign under regency government while religious and military conflicts tore the Western Empire apart. Flavius Valentinianus was proclaimed emperor as a small child following his father's death, ruling under the regency of his Arian mother Justina, who struggled to maintain imperial authority against both external barbarian pressure and internal Christian opposition led by powerful bishops like Ambrose of Milan. His reign was dominated by religious conflicts between his Arian family and Nicene Christians, demonstrating growing church independence from imperial control as bishops increasingly challenged imperial religious policies. These theological disputes reflected broader struggles over Christianity's proper relationship to imperial government and whether emperors could still control religious doctrine. The defining military crisis was Magnus Maximus's invasion of Italy, which forced the imperial court to flee to Thessalonica and seek eastern military support from Theodosius I. The successful counteroffensive that restored Western territorial integrity showed that imperial unity could still function during extreme emergencies. His death in 392 CE at age 21 was officially attributed to suicide, though many suspected assassination by his general Arbogast, who had effectively controlled imperial policy during the final years while the young emperor remained a powerless figurehead. His suspicious death created the succession crisis that would bring Theodosius west as sole ruler. Valentinian II had demonstrated the continuing problems with child emperors during crisis periods, when effective leadership required personal authority and military credibility, while his death marked the effective end of Western dynastic government and beginning of barbarian generals' complete dominance over imperial policy.
From child emperor to scholarly bureaucrat, meet Emperor number 67, Theodosius II. This son of Arcadius became Eastern Emperor at just 7 years old in 402 CE and ruled for an incredible 48 years until his death at 50 in 450 CE, governing through ministers and family members while the Eastern Empire developed the administrative systems that would preserve it for another 1,000 years. Flavius Theodosius II inherited the Eastern throne as a small child, ruling initially under Praetorian prefect Anthemius, and later his formidable sister Pulcheria, who effectively governed the empire while her brother focused on scholarly pursuits and religious ceremonies. His long reign represented the Eastern Empire's successful evolution into bureaucratic government that could function effectively regardless of imperial competence. His remarkable achievements included commissioning the Theodosian Code that systematized centuries of imperial law, constructing the massive land walls around Constantinople that would protect the capital for a millennium, and establishing diplomatic policies that managed barbarian threats through tribute and treaties rather than constant warfare. The defining challenge was managing the relationship with Attila the Hun, whose demands for tribute and territorial concessions drained Eastern resources while threatening imperial dignity. Theodosius's payments to Attila were strategically sound but politically humiliating, demonstrating how external pressure could force even powerful emperors into subordinate positions. His death in 450 CE from a riding accident ended the longest reign in later imperial history, leaving an Eastern Empire that was financially stable, administratively efficient, and militarily secure, despite ongoing external pressures. His succession would be determined by his sister Pulcheria, rather than through dynastic inheritance. Theodosius II had proven that competent ministers could govern effectively even under weak emperors, while his reign established the administrative and defensive systems that would allow the Eastern Empire to survive the Western collapse and continue for centuries as the Byzantine Empire.
From Western heir to powerless figurehead, meet Emperor number 68, Honorius. This son of Theodosius I became Western Emperor at just 10 years old in 395 CE and ruled for 28 years until his death at 38 in 423, presiding over the Western Empire's catastrophic territorial losses, while barbarian generals effectively controlled imperial policy. Flavius Honorius inherited an impossible situation. A Western Empire facing massive barbarian invasions, internal rebellions, and financial collapse, while being governed by a child who depended entirely on military strongmen like Stilicho for actual leadership.
his reign would witness the permanent loss of Britain, Gaul, Spain, and North Africa to barbarian settlement and independent kingdoms. The most infamous events of his reign included Alaric's sack of Rome in 1010 CE, which shocked the civilized world and demonstrated that even the eternal city wasn't safe from barbarian attack. His alleged reaction, weeping for his pet chicken named Rome rather than the actual city, was probably invented by hostile historians, but it perfectly captured his reputation for being disconnected from reality. His administrative policies were largely defensive, maintaining imperial government in Italy and remaining Roman territories, while his generals handled military crises that required constant attention. These policies represented realistic responses to impossible strategic challenges that no individual ruler could have solved through personal competence alone. His death in 423 CE from natural causes ended the Theodosian dynasty in the West, creating a succession crisis that brought further instability during the empire's final decades. His reign had demonstrated that individual emperors mattered less than systemic problems during periods of imperial decline, while his death accelerated the process of Western territorial disintegration that would culminate in the empire's formal end within a generation.
From barbarian fighting general to brief emperor, meet Emperor number 69, Constantius III. This military strongman became co-emperor at age 52 in 421 CE after decades of effectively ruling the Western Empire as its top general, but died just 7 months later, before he could implement his plans for imperial recovery. Flavius Constantius had served Honorius loyally for over 20 years, defeating usurpers and barbarian invaders while essentially governing the Western Empire as its military commander-in-chief. His elevation to co-emperor represented formal recognition of political reality. He'd been the real ruler for decades, while Honorius remained a ceremonial figurehead. His remarkable military achievements included defeating Constantine III's rebellion in Gaul, suppressing Jovinus's usurpation in the Rhine region, and negotiating territorial settlements with Visigothic federates that maintained some Roman control over southwestern Gaul and parts of Spain. These limited successes showed that competent leadership could still achieve partial recovery, even during the empire's decline. His brief reign as Augustus focused on administrative and military reforms designed to strengthen imperial finances and recruitment systems, showing practical understanding of the Western Empire's fundamental problems. His policies represented realistic attempts to manage decline through better organization rather than unrealistic dreams of complete restoration. His death in 421 CE from natural causes eliminated the most competent Western leader since Stilicho, leaving Honorius without effective military support during the final phase of imperial disintegration. His loss accelerated the Western Empire's territorial collapse and administrative breakdown throughout the remaining provinces. Constantius III had proven that individual military competence could provide temporary stability even during the empire's decline, though his death demonstrated how dependent the late Western Empire had become on personal leadership rather than institutional strength or systematic solutions to its fundamental problems. From civil servant to desperate usurper, meet Emperor number 70, Joannes. This senior bureaucrat ruled the Western Empire from 423 to 425 CE, representing the imperial administration's attempt to govern independently after Honorius's death, before Eastern intervention ended his brief experiment in bureaucratic rule. Joannes was a high-ranking civil servant who was proclaimed emperor by Western officials following Honorius's death, representing administrative continuity rather than military coup or dynastic succession. His elevation demonstrated how the imperial bureaucracy could attempt to maintain government functions even without constitutional legitimacy or military backing from the Eastern Empire. His brief reign focused on preserving what remained of Western imperial administration while seeking diplomatic recognition from Constantinople, showing realistic understanding that Western independence was impossible without Eastern support or at least neutrality. His policies represented the last attempt at purely civilian imperial government. The fatal challenge came when Theodosius II supported the child Valentianus III's dynastic claims, leading to Eastern military intervention under generals Artaburius and Aspar. Joannes lacked sufficient military strength to resist this invasion, demonstrating how completely the Western Empire had become dependent on Eastern support for political stability. His death in 425 CE came through execution after his capture by Eastern forces, ending the brief attempt at bureaucratic independence. His defeat restored nominal Theodosian control over the Western Empire, though real power would continue to rest with barbarian generals rather than constitutional emperors or civilian administrators. Joannes had demonstrated that administrative competence alone couldn't sustain imperial authority without military strength or dynastic legitimacy, while his failure showed the West's complete dependence on Eastern intervention for maintaining even the appearance of unified imperial government.
And that was the story of the 10 Roman emperors for today. If you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. And stay tuned for the next episode of 10 Roman Emperors on our channel, Drowsy Rome.